Welcome, everybody, to Sports Wars Big Game College Football Predictions, sponsored as always by sportspicks.locals.com. The big one up right off the gate is Notre Dame and Wisconsin meeting in the neutral site of Chicago. It should have intense, passionate fans from both sides with such geographic proximity to both fan bases, Chicago being always a Notre Dame stronghold, and, of course, Chicago just being about half an hour from the Wisconsin border. Wisconsin comes in as the 6.5-point favorite, anywhere between 6 and 7, depending on where you get it at the current sports books, with a projected score by the Vegas line of 26-20 or thereabouts. Notre Dame looks like their team total might finish around 19.5, maybe 20, up to 20.5, and Wisconsin anywhere from 26 to 27, depending where you get it and where it lines up. Now, why such a line, given that recently Notre Dame has been a playoff contender repeatedly in the last half-decade under Brian Kelly, whereas Wisconsin has been an outside team looking in terms of the playoff circle, while being a solid, dominant, strong team in the Big Ten, they have not been able to overcome their more talented opponents, especially Ohio State in conference play. So, but it's based on recent performances predominantly of Wisconsin and Notre Dame, but especially of expectations. The perception is that Notre Dame was going to have a down season with a change in quarterbacks and big offensive line losses, including 3 NFL offensive linemen. And also that whereas Wisconsin was coming in with the highly touted Graham Mertz at quarterback and was considered to be a potential even outside playoff contender and big title contender. And the perception is that whereas the Florida State game sort of exposed certain weaknesses with Notre Dame, including their offensive line issues and defensive coordinator questions, with a new defensive coordinator replacing last year's defensive coordinator who left to take the Vandy job. God bless him for that. While the defensive coordinator was highly touted, this was still going to be a new gig at a different level than Cincinnati, where he had come from before, and there was always some questions as to how much that was his defense versus Luke Fickell's defense at Cincinnati. So Notre Dame seemed to underperform in its first 3 games against Florida State, Toledo, and Purdue, though escaping with wins in all 3, only covering one of the 3, whereas people perceived Wisconsin as getting bad luck in losing to Penn State, even though they were favorites at home. Now, if you look at the statistical data and the talent ratings, however, that suggests that this power disparity in the Vegas line doesn't reflect the talent or really some deeper statistical analytical understanding. So let's start with Notre Dame. Yes, Notre Dame has some very talented young offensive linemen that are taking some time to break in, and their running game has been slow to start, but the passing game under Jack Cohn, with a revenge motivation here against Wisconsin, his former team that he had to leave because they chose Graham Mertz over him, has actually been putting up numbers equal or better than Ian Book on average. And while the defense did take some time to adjust and has shown some vulnerability to the run, in their first 2 games they really completely shut down Purdue, even more so than the scoreline may have reflected. And when you look at simple talent, the talent disparity here is substantial. From a recruiting perspective, Notre Dame's talent level is substantially above Wisconsin's. Notre Dame has 18 players that had a 94 rating or above under 24/7's aggregate rating score. If you look at NFL recruiting analysis, they similarly project about 17 to 18 players off this Notre Dame 2 deep making NFL rosters. By contrast, from a recruiting perspective, only 5 such Wisconsin players. And while Wisconsin has a history of developing its players to overachieve those expectations, nobody out there that I'm aware of really thinks that Wisconsin is talent comparable from a future NFL roster perspective as this Notre Dame team is. And Notre Dame's talent has talent at every level: wide receiver, running back, offensive line, backup quarterback, defensive line, linebacker, and of course their all-star potential top 5 pick safety. So when you look at that with a lot of experience booted in, a Notre Dame team that's fundamentally built to play Big Ten-style football, power running team, to stop other power running teams. Their one weakness tends to be speed and quickness to the perimeter, and that's not something Wisconsin has much at all, least of all in abundance. Not only that, if you look a little deeper at Wisconsin's stat lines, particularly if you go back to 2020, Graham Mertz has not been an improvement over Jack Cohn at all. Indeed, let's look at the total scores of the last games Graham Mertz has started against any top 30 defense. 7 points, 6 points, 7 points, 10 points. And dig into that Penn State line. Well, there was a lot of focus on bad luck in the red zone. What they missed is that Wisconsin could not generate big plays out of the passing game, which has been their problem in all of those games. All of those games, Graham Mertz has a yard per play average of less than 6.0. Miserable for college football. Against Penn State, Wisconsin averaged 3.8 yards per play, while giving up 5.8 yards per play, which usually translates into a 20-point whooping. That final score was not as misleading as some of the TV viewers and some of the box score interpreters might have initially anticipated. Penn State dominated Wisconsin. Penn State could get big plays. Wisconsin couldn't on both sides of the ball. And that usually doesn't bode well against a Notre Dame team that's designed to take away the Big Ten style, old physical style that Wisconsin plays. Then you dig in a little further and you look at Wisconsin as a favorite under this coaching staff against ranked teams. Losing record, 6-8. Look at Wisconsin as a record against more talented teams under this coaching staff, 4-12. Wisconsin's ability to score more than 27 points, as is currently 27 or more points, as is currently predicted by Vegas against the top 30 defense. Well, their only odds of that happening are again only 4 out of 16 in their last 20 tries under this coaching staff. So, and then you look at Brian Kelly as an underdog against a team with equal or less talent. He's 17-7 against the spread. So maybe this line is a little bit high, and maybe there's a little value to sprinkling some cash on that money line. But if you want all those picks, go to sportspicks.locals.com. And if you want more content like this, remember to like, share, and subscribe here at Sports Wars.